There's a moment that separates people who actually become prepared from people who never quite get there. It isn't dramatic or expensive. It happens the first time someone walks into a grocery store with a clear plan and walks out without one. Lists with 30 or 100 items feel comprehensive, but for someone starting from scratch, they create paralysis instead of progress. The quiet truth experienced preppers already know is that you do not need 100 items, or even 50. You need 6 specific foods, chosen for reasons far beyond cost or shelf life. These 6, when stored correctly, form a complete nutritional foundation, last for decades, work together rather than separately, and remove most of the anxiety that keeps people from ever starting. By the end of this video, you will know all 6, why each earned its place, and the one food at the top that outperforms almost everything else in your pantry, including products marketed as survival rations. Now, let's start where smart preppers start, with the foundation. Number 1, white rice. We start with the food that almost everyone underestimates, because it seems too obvious to take seriously. That instinct is exactly why so many people get this wrong. White rice is not on this list because it is fashionable or interesting. It is on this list because no other single food gives you more usable calories per dollar, per pound of storage weight, or per cubic foot of shelf space. And when stored correctly, it does this for 30 years or longer without any meaningful loss of quality. The science behind that shelf life is worth understanding because it explains why white rice specifically, not brown rice, belongs at the foundation. When rice is milled into its white form, the bran layer is removed. That bran layer is where the natural oils live, and natural oils are what cause grains to turn rancid. Strip the oils and you strip the primary mechanism of spoilage. Brown rice, by contrast, retains the bran and therefore retains the oils. Its shelf life under typical home conditions is closer to 1 or 2 years, not 30. The trade-off is real. Brown rice carries more fiber and more nutrients, but white rice carries time. For long-term storage, time wins by a wide margin. The storage method matters as much as the food itself. White rice stored in its original paper or thin plastic bag lasts a fraction of what it could. Number 2, dried beans and lentils. This is the second pillar of the foundation, and it pairs with rice for a reason that goes back centuries before the word prepping ever existed. When dried beans and white rice are eaten together, even at different meals across the same day, the body receives all 9 essential amino acids it cannot produce on its own. That combination forms what nutritionists call a complete protein. Without it, long-term reliance on stored grains alone leads to measurable deficiencies, fatigue, weakness, and slowed recovery from illness or injury. With it, you have a functional protein source as good as anything that comes off a butcher's counter at a fraction of the cost, and with shelf life that fresh meat will never approach, intact. Number 3, cooking oil and shelf-stable fats. Here's the item that quietly determines whether your stored food remains edible across weeks and months of actual use. And it is the item beginners most often underestimate. Rice and beans together provide carbohydrates and protein. What they do not provide is fat. And without fat, 2 things happen that compound on each other. The first is biological. Fat is required for the body to absorb fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Eat all the rice and beans you want. Without sufficient dietary fat in the same diet, those vitamins pass through the body without ever being properly used. Over weeks of fat-restricted eating, the cumulative effect on energy, immune function, skin, and cognitive clarity is measurable and unpleasant. The second effect is practical. Food cooked without fat is food most people will eventually stop eating in adequate quantities. Plain boiled rice and plain boiled beans day after day with no oil, no butter, no fat of any kind becomes psychologically exhausting in a way that is hard to predict from the outside. Appetite drops, caloric intake drops, energy drops. The food in your reserve technically still exists, but the body is no longer pulling enough fuel from it to function well. Number 4, salt and basic seasonings. Of every item on this list, this is the one beginners most commonly skip, and the one experienced preppers most consistently emphasize. The reason is something that does not become obvious until you actually rely on stored food for an extended period. Disruption does not just challenge physical survival, it challenges psychological sustainability. And those two things erode through completely different mechanisms. Day one of restricted eating, the food is adequate. Things feel manageable. Day two, meals taste a little flat, but nothing alarming. By day three or four, something measurable has shifted. Not in physical health, but in willingness. Appetite weakens. Meals stop feeling like meals. Caloric intake quietly drops below what the situation actually demands. And energy and cognitive function drop along with it. This is not pickiness. It reflects a documented pattern in extended disruption scenarios. Appetite regulation in humans depends heavily on sensory input: flavor, aroma, texture, variety. Number 5, rolled oats. Here's where the diet stops feeling repetitive and starts feeling like an actual rotation across the week. Rolled oats are one of the most underestimated items in any beginner storage plan, because the obvious use, breakfast cereal, does not sound dramatic enough to deserve its own video. That instinct misses what oats actually do for a long-term food reserve. The first thing they do is break the monotony of rice as the only grain in your pantry. After 3 weeks of rice for lunch and rice for dinner, the body and the mind both start signaling fatigue, even when calories and protein are technically adequate. The processing that makes instant oats cook in 30 seconds also reduces their shelf life and degrades the texture during long storage. For serious storage, choose rolled or steel cut. Save instant oats for active rotation. Combined with honey, which is the next item, oats become something genuinely satisfying. Combined with cooking oil and a pinch of salt, they become a savory porridge that pairs surprisingly well with beans. Mixed with powdered milk and water, they become a more complete morning meal. The flexibility is the point. Number 6, honey. We end where every smart prepper eventually ends. With a food that does not just last for years or decades, it lasts for millennia. That claim sounds like an exaggeration. It is not. Archaeologists have recovered sealed jars of honey from ancient Egyptian tombs estimated to be over 3,000 years old. When tested in modern laboratories, that honey was still chemically intact and still safe to consume. 3,000 years. Nothing else in your pantry, on this list or off, is in the same category. The science of why honey behaves this way is worth understanding because it explains why honey deserves its place at the top. Honey contains almost no free moisture. As long as it remains sealed and uncontaminated, it does not go bad. A spoonful of honey delivers usable energy within minutes of consumption. The fourth role is preservation. Historically, honey was used to preserve fruits, nuts, and even meats, long before refrigeration existed. Most modern households will never need to preserve food this way, but having a tool that can do it sitting quietly in your pantry is a category of capability worth keeping in mind. The format you store honey in matters more than most beginners realize. Small retail jars are convenient but expensive per ounce and inefficient for storage. The format that actually makes sense for a serious reserve is large containers, 3 lb or 5 lb jugs sealed and stored in a cool, dark place. The cost per ounce drops significantly, and the shelf life is functionally indefinite either way. There is one quality consideration that has become more relevant in recent years. A meaningful percentage of honey sold through standard retail channels has been documented to contain undisclosed corn syrup or other sweeteners as adulterants. That practice undermines both the nutritional profile and the legendary shelf life. 6 foods: white rice for the carbohydrate base, dried beans and lentils for the protein partner, cooking oil and shelf-stable fats for the calories and the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, salt, and basic seasonings for the psychological sustainability of every meal that follows. Rolled oats for the breakfast variety and the nutritional gaps the foundation cannot fill on its own, and honey for the millennia of shelf stability and the breadth of utility no other food can replicate. This list is short because the foundation itself is short. The grocery store becomes a convenience rather than a dependency. That is the real value of starting here, with these 6 foods before anything else. Now, I want to hear from you. Of these six, which one do you already have stocked? And which one are you going to focus on first? Drop it in the comments below. Reading through the responses tells me which directions to take future videos. And the conversations between viewers in the comment sections of these videos are often more useful than anything I could put into the script itself. Take care of the foundation first, everything else gets easier from there.